Hey there! Before we get started, could we ask one small favor? If you're enjoying Saltwater Stories, please take a moment to follow the show, leave a rating or review, and share an episode with someone who loves the ocean as much as you do. Every follow, every review, and every share helps more people discover these stories from our blue planet and helps our community continue to grow. You can also follow us on Instagram for the things that inspire us: daily signals from around the ocean awareness days, and a little extra ocean wonder between episodes. And if you'd like to go beyond the podcast, check out Currents, our publication, where we make complex marine science accessible for every level of curiosity. You'll find links to everything we're working on, including Instagram and Currents, at saltwaterstories.co. Now, let's get to today's story.
You are resting belly down on coarse, abrasive stone. The surface beneath you is rough, like a jagged topography of ancient, calcified coral.
And you feel the cool, steady pull of the ocean current sliding over your skin that feels like heavy-duty sandpaper, built to withstand the razor-sharp edges of the reef.
Yeah, exactly. It is midday, but where you are, hidden deep beneath a massive limestone overhang, the light is, well, it's muted. It's painted in these deep, shadowy blues and cool purples.
You aren't swimming. You haven't moved a single inch forward in hours.
But you are breathing, rhythmically, effortlessly. You expand your heavily muscled throat, pulling cool, oxygen-rich water in through tiny, specialized holes located just behind your eyes, completely bypassing your mouth.
You're perfectly integrated into the stone. You're just waiting.
Right, because the ocean above you is bright and frantic, filled with the chaotic energy of the daytime reef.
Schools of vividly colored wrasses and tangs are darting through the sunlit water column above, burning endless calories to stay ahead of the predators that patrol the open blue.
But you belong to the shadows. You belong to the patience of the stone.
Then the ambient light begins to fade, the blues turn to deep purples, and then, slowly, to absolute pitch black.
A biological switch, ancient and irresistible, flips deep within your nervous system. The time for stillness has passed, the reef has gone to sleep, and it is time for you to move.
You slide smoothly out of the deep, overarching coral cave. You don't dart or thrash, right? You glide, silent and low, like a heavy, fluid shadow detaching itself from the solid reef.
You navigate seamlessly out of the coral maze and over a moonlit meadow of swaying green seagrass blades. As you hover just inches above the pale sand, you drag two fleshy, highly sensitive appendages across the sediment.
You are literally tasting the ocean floor as you move.
Suddenly, a chemical signature hits your receptors. A faint rhythmic electrical hum registers in the jelly-filled pores on your snout.
You taste something hidden deep in the sand beneath you.
You start. You press your thick, fleshy lips completely flat against the sediment, creating a perfect seal.
And in a fraction of a single second, you violently expand your throat. The action creates an inescapable, crushing vacuum.
A heavy crab, perfectly hidden and armored in its burrow, is sucked instantly and violently upward, straight into the dark cavern of your mouth.
The transition from total sluggish stillness to explosive, physics-defying speed is absolutely breathtaking to witness.
It really is. And as we pull back from that moonlit seagrass meadow, watching the sand settle back to the seafloor, the identity of our hidden hunter is finally revealed.
We are looking at the Atlantic nurse shark.
Welcome back to Saltwater Stories. I am so incredibly thrilled you are here with us today.
We are embarking on a cinematic journey into the hidden nocturnal life of an absolute ocean architect.
Yes, we are going to explore how a slow-moving, bottom-dwelling predator has completely mastered the complex, unforgiving, and, highly competitive world of the coral reef.
It's a creature that completely defies almost every stereotype we hold about its kind. When we think of sharks, we usually picture constant, restless motion.
Right. We picture the open blue water, the sleek, silvery torpedoes built for high-speed chases.
Exactly. We think of the great whites or the blue sharks, animals that are essentially giant, swimming mussels built to outrun fast prey.
But the nurse shark has taken a completely different evolutionary path. It hasn't tried to outrun anything.
No, it has solved the problem of survival by becoming the undisputed master of the ocean floor, the benthic zone.
Before we get into exactly how it catches its food with that crazy vacuum or how it breathes without swimming, let's set the stage. What scene are we witnessing right now?
Well, let's drop down into the water. Imagine it is high noon on a pristine, sunlit coral reef in the Caribbean.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The water is crystal clear, shimmering with golden nets of light filtering down from the surface. Schools of bright yellow tangs and shimmering silver jacks dart through the water column, catching the light.
But we are sinking lower, right, leaving the frantic activity behind.
Exactly. We drop past the branching elkhorn corals, down to the very foundation of the reef, where the limestone meets the white sand.
And we peer under a massive, overarching brain coral.
Right, and it's dark underneath, a stark, cool contrast to the blindingly bright water just a few feet above. And there, pressed perfectly flat against the white sand, blending seamlessly into the shadows, is a broad, brownish shape.
If you weren't looking for it, you would swear it's just a smooth boulder that had settled under the ledge.
You really would.
I'm looking at their shape in my mind's eye, and it's honestly throwing me off. Because if you look closely at that resting shape, you realize it doesn't look like the terrifying, towering silhouette we see in movies.
No, not at all.
They look almost flat. Why are they built like a pancake instead of a torpedo?
To understand that, we have to start with the architecture. We can't see the skeleton. Like all sharks, the nurse shark doesn't have a single bone in its massive body. Its entire skeletal structure is made of cartilage.
Cartilage. So that's the exact same tough, flexible tissue that gives human ears and noses their shape.
Yes, exactly. But for a benthic master, a bottom dweller like the nurse shark, a cartilaginous skeleton is a monumental evolutionary advantage over heavy bone.
Because of the weight, bone is incredibly dense. I imagine if a creature this large, they can get up to 10 feet long and weigh hundreds of pounds, right?
Oh, absolutely. They are massive.
Right, so if they had a skeleton made of dense bone, it would have to expend a massive amount of energy just to keep from sinking straight into the mud.
That is exactly the issue. Cartilage is significantly lighter. Furthermore, we have to remember that sharks completely lack the gas-filled swim bladders that bony fish use to regulate their buoyancy.
Oh, right. A grouper or a snapper can just inflate a tiny internal balloon to hover effortlessly mid-water.
Yeah, but sharks can't do that.
Yeah.
So to compensate for not having a swim bladder, the nurse shark relies on that lightweight cartilaginous skeleton paired with a massive, incredibly oil-filled liver.
Because oil is lighter than water.
Exactly. This internal oil reservoir helps them achieve a state of near-neutral buoyancy, allowing them to hover just above the sand without sinking like a stone.
Wow. That flexibility must be incredible, too. Because when you watch a nurse shark navigating a crowded reef, they don't just swim past the coral, they weave through it.
They really do.
I've seen footage where they literally twist and bend their bodies in half to squeeze through impossibly tight limestone crevices. A rigid, bony skeleton would make that kind of extreme contortion physically impossible. They'd just get stuck.
And that supreme flexibility is paired perfectly with the flattened body shape you noticed earlier. In biological terms, they possess a broad, dorsoventrally flattened head.
Meaning they are flattened from top to bottom like a pancake, rather than side to side like a typical fin fish.
Precisely. This specific architectural design allows them to rest with extreme stability against the seafloor. When the ocean's surge pushes and pulls against the reef, their low profile allows the water to simply slide over them without lifting them off the sand.
That makes so much sense.
And crucially, their mouth is not located at the front of their face like a great white's. It is subterminal, positioned entirely underneath their head, near the very tip of their blunt, rounded snout.
So this is an anatomical layout engineered explicitly for an animal whose entire existence revolves around rooting through the sand and pressing its face directly into the ocean floor.
Exactly.
I want to look at the fins, too, because they are completely wild to me. If we connect this to the bigger picture of how we usually imagine sharks, we inevitably think of that iconic, towering, triangular dorsal fin slicing menacingly through the surface of the water.
Right, the classic movie image.
Yeah. But the nurse shark has two dorsal fins on its back, and they are broadly rounded, almost entirely lacking that sharp triangular apex. And what's really fascinating is that the second dorsal fin, the one closer to the tail, is almost identical in size to the first.
It gives them a very distinct, sloping, almost reptilian silhouette.
It really does.
The lack of a towering dorsal fin is a highly deliberate adaptation.
Wow.
A tall, rigid fin would be an absolute liability for an animal that spends its life squeezing into tight, low-ceilinged coral caves.
Oh, yeah, it would constantly scrape, snag, and tear on the sharp rock overhead.
Exactly. But perhaps the most remarkable fins on the nurse shark are the pectoral fins, the paired fins located on its sides, just behind the gills.
Right, because in open ocean sharks, those pectoral fins are stiff and rigid. They act exactly like the wings of an airplane, generating hydrodynamic lift as the shark swims constantly forward, keeping it from sinking.
But the nurse shark seems to use its pectoral fins completely differently. They use them almost like arms.
Wait, like arms?
Yeah, they're incredibly broad, highly muscular, and remarkably flexible. You can actually observe them using these fins to physically prop their heavy bodies up off the sand, or even using them to slowly clamber and walk across the rocky bottom.
That is so wild. They are essentially crawling over the reef like a giant underwater lizard.
They really are. And we absolutely cannot forget the tail. The caudal fin of a nurse shark is massive. It comprises more than 1/4 of its entire body length.
Wow.
It is long, sweeping, and asymmetrical. Unlike an apex predator built for the open ocean, which has a symmetrical crescent moon-shaped tail built for short bursts of explosive straight-line speed, the nurse shark's tail completely lacks a distinct lower lobe.
Which actually makes total sense when you think about the geometry of their environment. If it had a long lower lobe jutting downward from its tail, it would constantly be draining it against the sharp coral and abrasive sand as it hovered just an inch above the bottom.
Yes, the tail would be in tatters within a week.
So the long, sweeping upper tail is built for steady, undulating, eel-like propulsion. It's built for endurance and tight maneuverability in small spaces, not high-speed chases.
Exactly.
But, wait, I'm stuck on something here. I have a logical roadblock.
What's the roadblock?
If this animal is a shark, a member of a lineage of legendary predators honed over hundreds of millions of years, why give up the speed? I mean, a coral reef is crowded, yes, but it is filled with incredibly fast, agile fish.
Right.
If the shark is built like a slow-moving, crawling tank, how does it ever catch anything? Why give up the fundamental weapon of speed?
It is the perfect question, and the answer lies in understanding the layout of the grocery store, so to speak.
Okay.
The open ocean is essentially a biological desert. It requires massive speed and constant restless motion just to find widely dispersed, fast-moving food. The coral reef, however, is the exact opposite.
It's crowded.
It is a crowded, complex, three-dimensional metropolis. It's absolutely overflowing with food crabs, lobsters, eels, sleeping fish, but that food is entirely hidden.
Ah, I see.
It is tucked deep into narrow cracks, buried under inches of sand, or armored in heavy, crushing shells. The nurse shark didn't give up speed, it traded it for access.
Oh, that is brilliant. Speed is totally useless if you just end up crashing headfirst into a solid limestone coral head because you can't turn fast enough.
Precisely. Every single inch of the nurse shark's body is an evolutionary answer to the specific problem of extracting hidden, fortified calories from a complex physical maze.
So what you need in a maze isn't a jet engine.
No, you need extreme maneuverability, you need stealth, and most importantly, you need an entirely different set of sensory inputs to find food you can't even see.
That brings us perfectly to their sensory toolkit. Because if you look closely at a nurse shark's face, their eyes are incredibly small compared to the rest of their head.
They are very small, yes.
From what I understand, their vision is actually quite limited. They can only see effectively up to about 10 meters or so in clear water, so they clearly aren't scanning the horizon for the silhouette of a struggling fish.
No, they're operating in a world defined by completely different signals. And when the sun finally goes down and the vibrant reef is plunged into absolute crushing darkness, vision becomes largely irrelevant anyway. That is when the nurse shark's true sensory brilliance shines. Hanging down from the front of their upper lip, right near their nostrils, are two fleshy cylindrical appendages. These are the nasal barbels.
They look almost exactly like the long whiskers hanging off the face of a river catfish.
Very similar, yes.
So if I'm understanding this right, it's not like they're looking for prey in the dark. It's more like, imagine someone hands you a thick, heavy cloth bag filled with dark sand, and they drop a single glass marble into the bottom.
Okay, I'm visualizing it.
Now, try to find that marble by just staring down into the dark bag. You can't, you're blind. But if you reach your hand in and gently drag your fingertips through the sand, you will feel the hard, smooth shape of the marble instantly. Are those barbells basically their fingertips?
That is a flawless analogy. Those barbells are exactly like highly sensitive fingertips. As the shark glides silently over the seafloor, it trails those fleshy barbells across the sand and the rocks. And those appendages are absolutely packed with mechanoreceptors for feeling the slightest physical texture and chemoreceptors for taste. They're literally tasting the physical chemistry of the seafloor as they drag their face over it.
So if a crab has walked across that sand 10 minutes ago, The chemical trail left behind by its shell is tasted by the barbels.
Exactly.
That is wild. They are tasting footprints. But it gets even crazier than that, doesn't it? Because they aren't just tasting the water, they are feeling electricity.
Yes, they are. Like all sharks, they possess a fascinating network of jelly-filled pores deeply concentrated around their snout and head, known as the ampullae of Lorenzini.
The ampullae of Lorenzini.
Right. This sensory system gives them the superpower of electroreception. To understand how profound this is, you have to realize that every single living creature on Earth generates a faint, microscopic bioelectric field. Even us. When a muscle contracts, it fires an electrical impulse. Even the tiny, rhythmic, involuntary beating of a completely buried crab's heart generates a microvolt electrical field that radiates out into the conductive salt water.
Wait, so a crab could be perfectly camouflaged, buried under 3 inches of opaque mud, making absolutely no sound, holding completely still, and the nurse shark swimming overhead would literally feel the electricity of its heartbeat pulsing in the water.
Exactly. The nurse shark can detect these microvolt electrical signals at very close range, pinpointing prey that is completely invisible to the eye and buried under sediment. It creates a 3-dimensional map of life hidden in the sand.
That is just, it's mind-blowing. And on top of tasting the sand and feeling electricity, they are also listening to the reef.
Yes, they have an incredible acoustic perception specifically tuned for ultra-low frequency sounds right in the 300 to 600 hertz range.
So if a lobster is shifting its heavy armored shell in the dark, or a wounded fish is struggling hundreds of meters away, it sends a low-frequency pressure wave rippling through the water column.
And the shark can feel that pressure wave hit its body and instantly home in on the exact direction of the struggle. It's a massive, complex symphony of non-visual information guiding them in the pitch black.
And this incredible sensory array allows them to do something seemingly impossible, thrive as a slow, methodical predator in an ocean entirely filled with fast, agile prey.
Which brings us to one of their most remarkable and frankly surprising daily behaviors. To fully understand it, we need to leave the bright midday reef top.
What scene are we witnessing right now?
Let's plunge deeper into the architecture of the coral. Describe the environment we are entering.
Okay, we are descending. The bright sunlit water begins to fade, turning a cool emerald green and then a deeper blue as we drop down the sheer vertical face of the reef wall.
We are looking for shadows.
We find a dark opening in the solid limestone, a deep, completely hidden underwater cave. The space is tight, the ceiling is incredibly low, and the light barely penetrates the entrance.
And as our eyes slowly adjust to the gloom, we see something astonishing.
The floor of the cave is not empty sand. It is covered in sharks.
Yes.
We see a massive pile of perhaps 30 or 40 large adult nurse sharks. They are resting entirely on top of one another, stacked up like cordwood in a fireplace.
They are completely motionless, piled into a dense interlocking mass of heavy bodies, but they are very much alive.
It is a scene that completely shatters the deeply ingrained cultural myth of the lone, endlessly roaming, solitary shark.
It really does. What we are witnessing in this cave is a masterpiece of energy conservation and physiological adaptation. To understand why they are doing this, why they are holding perfectly still for hours on end, we have to look closely at the mechanics of how they breathe.
Because many of the iconic sharks we are familiar with, the ones that rule the open ocean, are obligate ram ventilators.
Right, meaning they have to literally ram water into their open mouths to survive. They have to swim forward continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the absolute moment they're born until the day they die, just to create the forward water pressure needed to force oxygenated water over their gills.
If they stop swimming for even a few minutes, the flow of water stops and they suffocate.
Precisely. They are prisoners of their own forward momentum. But the nurse shark has evolved a magnificent workaround that frees it from that constant treadmill.
Thank goodness for that.
They possess heavily muscled cheeks and intricate throat structures, allowing them to perform a biological action called buccal pumping.
Buccal pumping.
The buccal cavity is simply the internal space of the mouth and throat. While resting completely motionless on the floor of that dark cave, buried under the weight of 3 other sharks, the nurse shark opens its mouth slightly and forcefully expands its massive throat.
Oh, and this action creates an internal vacuum, sucking surrounding seawater straight into the mouth.
Yes, and then it closes its mouth tight and violently contracts those heavy throat muscles, physically squeezing the trapped water backward over the gill filaments.
extracting the dissolved oxygen and pushing the depleted water out through the 5 distinct gill slits on its side.
It is a highly active muscular process of pumping, completely independent of forward swimming.
It's the exact mechanical principle of a bellows used to stoke a blacksmith's fire. Or, if we bring it into the kitchen, think about a turkey baster or a rubber bulb syringe.
Oh, that's a great way to picture it.
Right. When you squeeze the rubber bulb, it pushes the air out. When you release your grip, the rubber bulb expands back to its original shape, creating a sudden vacuum inside that sucks the liquid up into the tube.
Exactly. The nurse shark's heavily muscled throat is that expanding and contracting rubber bulb. It pumps the water so the body doesn't have to move an inch.
But here is where the mechanics run into a real-world environmental problem. What happens when the shark is resting completely flat on its belly, and its mouth, which we established is located underneath its head, is pressed firmly and inescapably into the fine, silty sand of the seafloor?
That is a huge problem. If it used its mouth to pump water in that position, it would suck in a massive, choking mouthful of suffocating grit and mud.
This explains the tiny holes behind their eyes.
Yes, the spiracles. We mentioned them briefly at the very beginning of our journey. They are tiny, specialized respiratory openings located just behind the shark's eyes, on the top of their head.
So they act as a highly specialized secondary dorsal intake valve.
Precisely. When the mouth is completely blocked by sand, or even when the mouth is fully occupied with wrestling a large, struggling piece of prey, the shark simply seals its lips tight.
And it then draws clean, perfectly oxygenated water in from the clear water column above its head, straight through the spiracles, and pumps it down and out through the gills.
It is a flawless, elegant system for an animal committed to a benthic lifestyle.
That perfectly solves the breathing problem. But resting in a tight coral cave piled directly on top of dozens of other massive bodies brings up another intense physical challenge.
It definitely does.
Coral is not smooth rock. It is incredibly sharp. It is basically composed of millions of tiny, razor-sharp limestone blades built by tiny polyps.
It's treacherous.
If I accidentally rubbed my bare arm against a brain coral head, I'd be bleeding instantly. How do these massive, heavy animals squeeze into these tight rock crevices every single day, dragging their bellies across the stone without tearing their skin to absolute ribbons?
They don't tear because they are essentially wearing chainmail armor.
Chainmail armor.
Yeah, shark skin is fundamentally different from the skin of a bony fish. It doesn't have flat, overlapping, slippery scales. It is entirely covered in structures called dermal denticles, which literally translates from Latin as skin teeth.
Skin teeth? That sounds intense.
They are microscopic, incredibly hard, tooth-like structures, deeply embedded in the skin matrix. But the nurse shark possesses a very specific, highly modified type of denticle. Biologists classify them as abrasion-strength denticles.
So they're built for wear and tear.
Exactly. They are significantly broader, thicker, and much more robust than the fine, streamlined denticles found on fast-swimming, open-water sharks.
It's heavy-duty cobblestone armor. I've heard that if you were to run your bare hand down the back of a nurse shark from head to tail going with the grain, it would feel relatively smooth, almost like a wet wetsuit.
That's right.
But if you rubbed it backwards, from tail to head, against the grain of those tiny teeth, it would feel like the coarsest grit of heavy-duty sandpaper you can possibly imagine. It would scrape the skin right off your knuckles.
It really would. And they even have a highly specialized mucus layer they actively secrete near the trailing edges of their fins to provide further chemical protection and perhaps significantly reduce the friction as they drag their heavy bodies over the jagged reef.
This profound physical armor allows them to safely engage in the remarkable behavior we are witnessing in the cave, extreme social tolerance.
Yes. While many top ocean predators are fiercely territorial, aggressively driving competitors away from their hunting grounds, nurse sharks actively seek each other out during their diurnal or daytime resting periods.
Because they have a massive, almost inexhaustible amount of food available to them on the reef at night, so they simply don't need to aggressively defend a specific hunting territory.
Instead, they gather in these incredibly tight quarters. The exact evolutionary reason behind this pileup isn't entirely settled by biologists.
It might just be real estate, right?
Exactly. It may simply be a matter of real estate. The best, deepest, most protective caves that hide them from large tiger sharks are rare on the reef, so they are forced to share the premium locations.
Or there may be highly subtle social hierarchies, chemical communication and bonding occurring within these tactile, intertwined piles.
We are still learning so much about them.
What really blows my mind is the navigation required to maintain the specific lifestyle. We are talking about extreme, almost unbelievable sight fidelity.
It's astonishing.
Let's map out their day. A nurse shark will wake up in that pile as the sun sets, leave the cave, and swim perhaps several kilometers away out into the dark, featureless, swaying seagrass beds to hunt all night. But as dawn approaches, it doesn't just find a new, random place to sleep. It navigates flawlessly over miles of identical-looking sand and coral back to the exact same coral head, the exact same cave, to sleep in the exact same physical pile of sharks day after day.
To navigate a highly complex, three-dimensional coral matrix in pitch darkness and return to a specific meter-wide hole requires a spatial memory and sensory mapping capability that easily rivals any modern GPS system we have in our cars or phones.
Wow.
When our phones navigate, they rely on a constellation of satellites in space beaming down coordinates. The dark is doing the exact same kind of complex triangulation, but entirely internally.
So they're constantly reading the subtle magnetic fields of the Earth, mapping the microscopic chemical gradients flowing in the water currents, and memorizing the unique acoustic signature of the reef structure itself.
Exactly, which perfectly sets the stage for the moment they leave that cave. The peaceful resting period is over. The sun has set.
What scene are we witnessing right now?
Let's return to the first-person perspective. Transport us directly into the hunt. We are beneath the waves. The water is cooling. Let's watch them work.
It is pitch black. You are gliding completely silently, mere inches above the uneven, treacherous terrain of the reef edge.
Your vision is entirely useless here, but your sensory world is ablaze with information.
The water is a chaotic symphony of chemical trails and pulsing electrical signals.
Suddenly, you detect a faint, irresistible chemical plume wafting from a tight, horizontal crack in the limestone structure directly ahead of you.
It is the distinct scent of a sleeping parrotfish, tucked deeply into the coral matrix to hide for the night.
You approach the crack. You realize instantly it is far too narrow for your broad, flattened head to enter. The fish is completely out of reach.
But you don't need to reach it. You slowly press your thick, fleshy lips completely flush against the jagged rock surrounding the opening, creating a perfect, watertight seal over the crevice.
We are watching a slow-moving, heavily armored, seemingly sluggish predator suddenly unleash lightning-fast, devastating physics.
This is the art of inertial suction feeding. It is, without any exaggeration, one of the most violent, rapid, and powerful biomechanical events in the entire ocean. How does it actually work? Break down the mechanics of the strike.
Well, once the nurse shark forms that flawless, watertight seal over the coral crevice, it drops its heavy lower jaw and violently expands its massive hyoid, or throat cavity.
Okay.
The physical speed of this internal muscular expansion is almost impossible to comprehend. High-speed cameras have clocked the entire sequence at just 32 milliseconds.
Wait, 32 milliseconds.
Fast, right?
Let's put that in perspective. A single blink of a human eye takes about 300 milliseconds. So in 1/10 of the time it takes you to blink, the shark has executed its entire strike. How is that physically possible to move that much water that fast?
By expanding that internal volume so incredibly fast, the shark is essentially playing with fluid dynamics. It instantly drops the internal pressure inside its mouth to a level vastly lower than the surrounding ocean pressure.
Creating a vacuum.
Right? It generates an extreme area of subambient pressure, a near-perfect vacuum. In fact, biologists have measured that nurse sharks generate some of the absolute highest subambient suction pressures ever recorded in any aquatic vertebrate on Earth.
Wow.
Because nature abhors a vacuum, the water inside the coral crevice has absolutely no choice but to rush instantly and violently into the shark's mouth to equalize the massive pressure differential.
And the rushing water carries the heavy, sleeping parrotfish right along with it.
Exactly.
I love thinking about this using a really simple analogy. Imagine trying to drink a highly viscous liquid, like an incredibly thick frozen milkshake, through a very narrow plastic straw.
That's a great visual.
If you just gently suck, nothing happens. To get the thick liquid to move up the straw, you have to violently retract your cheeks and expand your throat to create a localized area of intense negative pressure inside your mouth.
Right, and the heavy atmospheric pressure pushing down on the top of the milkshake in the cup is what actually forces the liquid up the straw to fill the vacuum in your mouth.
Exactly. The nurse shark is doing the exact same mechanical thing, but with such devastating explosive power that it can suck a heavy, muscular, clawed crab straight out of its burrow or rip a massive queen conch directly out of its impenetrable, spiraled shell.
It is a brilliantly evolved adaptation, but it comes with a severe, unavoidable hydrodynamic limitation. In water, suction force decays exponentially with distance.
Meaning it drops off incredibly fast.
Yes. The vacuum dissipates almost instantly once you move away from the source.
Oh, yeah.
For the nurse shark's massive suction to be effective enough to pull a heavy animal, its mouth must be positioned within roughly 3 centimeters, about 1.2 inches of its prey.
So if the prey is 5 inches away, the vacuum will barely ruffle its fins. It won't capture it.
No, it won't.
Wait, I'm stuck on the physics of this again. If their absolute ultimate weapon only works from a single inch away, and we've already established in deep detail that they are slow swimmers with broad, rounded fins built for crawling, how do they ever catch active fish?
It seems like a contradiction.
Fish are incredibly fast and agile. If you so much as cast a shadow over a reef, a parrotfish is gone in a flash. How does a bulky tank get within 1 inch of a sports car?
That is the sheer genius of their nocturnal hunting strategy. The nurse shark knows it cannot outswim the fast diurnal daytime fish, so it simply doesn't try.
It waits.
It waits with endless patience for the sun to go down. When complete darkness falls, those fast, agile, brightly colored reef fish, the wrasses, the parrotfish, the butterfly fish, are rendered blind and vulnerable.
Right, because to survive the night, they seek shelter, they tuck themselves tightly into narrow crevices, or they literally bury themselves in the loose sand to sleep. They become completely immobilized.
And the nurse shark, utilizing its sensitive barbells and its incredible electroreception, finds these sleeping fish in the pitch black and deploys the massive suction vacuum before the sleeping fish can even wake up to mount an escape response.
The darkness completely nullifies the prey's only advantage, speed. It's an ambush in the truest, most brutal sense of the word. And because they can extract hidden prey, their diet is incredibly varied. Stomach content analyses show they are eating spiny lobsters, heavy crabs, sea urchins completely covered in venomous spines, slippery squid, and heavily armored conchs.
They are not picky eaters.
You even occasionally find large clumps of algae or bits of broken coral in their stomachs, though that's clearly not because they are deciding to eat a salad.
No.
It's just accidental, unavoidable bycatch from the sheer indiscriminate power of the vacuuming process. They suck up the surrounding rock and the seaweed right along with the crab.
But once that heavy armored prey is sucked violently into the mouth, the shark faces another massive mechanical challenge. What if the crab is simply too large to swallow whole?
They can't chew like a human.
Instead, they employ a fascinating, almost mechanical behavior known as suck and spit dismemberment.
Suck and spit. Okay, that paints a picture.
They will rapidly suck the prey in with a massive vacuum. And if it's too large to pass down the throat, they will forcefully spit it halfway out, violently shake their heavy head from side to side to tear the animal's limbs off, and then quickly suck the smaller, manageable pieces back in.
That sounds incredibly violent and honestly terrible for their teeth. I mean, crabs and conchs are basically made of rock-hard calcium carbonate. To process those heavy shells, they must need some serious hardware in their mouth.
They absolutely do. They have a highly specialized dental conveyor belt. Their teeth aren't the large, triangular, serrated slicing blades you see on a great white, which are built for cutting soft blubber.
Right.
The nurse shark's teeth are tiny, heavily built, backward-curving, serrated, crushing tools designed to shatter armor. And like all sharks, they are constantly replacing them as they break or wear down.
But what's truly fascinating here is how the environment dictates this biology. The rate of tooth replacement is directly tied to the temperature of the ocean water.
Yes. In the colder, sluggish winter months, when their metabolism slows down, a nurse shark will replace a full row of teeth every 50 to 70 days.
But in the warm, active summer months, when the water heats up and their metabolism kicks into high gear for hunting, they cycle through an entire fresh row of razor-sharp, crushing teeth every 10-20 days.
It is a perfectly calibrated biological machine responding in real time to the rhythm of the ocean.
It really is. But to fully appreciate the nurse shark, to really understand this machine, we have to look at how it is built from the very beginning. We need to look at their origins.
Let's do that.
What scene are we witnessing right now? Take us away from the coral reef. Drop us into the water where the story actually starts.
Let's travel closer to the shoreline. The tide is currently high. We are floating in a dense coastal mangrove forest.
Oh, wow.
The environment here is fundamentally different from the crystal clear coral reef we just left. The water is murky, heavily stained the color of dark tea by rich organic tannins seeping from the decaying leaves, and is incredibly thick with nutrients.
Sunlight struggles to filter down through a tangled, almost impenetrable labyrinth of wooden stilt roots that drop dramatically from the leafy tree canopy directly down into the salty mud.
And weaving completely silently through this dark wooden maze is a tiny, perfectly camouflaged predator.
We are witnessing the very beginning of the nurse shark life cycle. To understand how they get into this murky forest, we have to look closely at their remarkable reproductive strategy.
It's so unique.
Because it is fundamentally different from most typical bony fish, which simply broadcast thousands of tiny, vulnerable, unfertilized eggs out into the open ocean water column, leaving them entirely to the unpredictable mercy of the currents in the mouths of filter feeders.
Exactly. The nurse shark employs a highly specialized strategy called aplacental viviparity.
A placental viviparity. Let's break that complex term down because understanding the mechanics of it is vital to understanding their survival.
Well, viviparity essentially means live birth, but the aplacental part means they do it completely without a placenta. Here is how it works. The mother shark produces eggs, just like a bird or a reptile. But she does not lay them out in the dangerous ocean. She retains the fragile egg cases safely inside her paired internal uteri.
Inside the mother's warm, protected body, each individual embryo develops over an incredibly long gestation period, about 5 to 6 entire months.
But unlike a mammal, the mother's bloodstream is not directly providing a continuous flow of nutrients to the baby via an umbilical cord and placenta.
Instead, each tiny embryo is nourished entirely by a massive, highly concentrated, nutrient-rich yolk sac attached directly to its belly.
Yes.
It's like they have their own internal pre-packed life support lunchbox right inside the egg with them. They just slowly consume the yolk as they grow in the dark.
Precisely. It is an incredibly energy-intensive process for the mother to produce that much rich yolk. Once the yolk is finally fully consumed and the embryos had developed into miniature, fully functional little sharks, they actually hatch from their leathery egg cases while still deep inside the mother's body.
And then the female swims into the shallow, protected waters and gives birth to fully independent, completely formed, live young.
And she gives birth to quite a few of them at once. A typical healthy litter consists of anywhere from 20 to 30 pups, and sometimes massive litters of up to 50 have been reliably recorded.
Wow. When these neonates, these newborn pups, finally emerge into the murky mangrove water, they are incredibly small, only about 27 to 30 centimeters long.
That's roughly 11 or 12 inches, just a foot long.
And at that tiny size, swimming in an ocean entirely filled with hungry, massive predators, they are incredibly, desperately vulnerable, which is exactly why they look so vastly different from their giant parents.
If you look at an adult nurse shark resting in its cave, it is a solid, uniform, unbroken yellowish-brown or gray-brown. Looks like a rock.
But the foot-long newborn pups are completely covered in a beautiful, intricate pattern of dark black spots, each carefully surrounded by a much lighter halo.
This isn't just decoration either. It is an evolutionary masterstroke of disruptive camouflage.
Because when these tiny pups swim slowly through the shallow, swaying seagrass beds or hide deep among the tangled mangrove roots, those dark spots perfectly mimic the dappled sunlight and complex, shifting shadows of their complex environment.
Exactly. To a bird looking down, or a larger fish looking up, the outline of the shark's body completely dissolves. They become nearly invisible.
I like to think of the vast mangrove root system as a highly secure, natural nursery fortress. It's an endless wooden maze where the gaps between the thick roots are just barely large enough for the foot-long pups to maneuver through.
Right.
But those exact same narrow gaps act as locked, impenetrable wooden doors to the massive, bulky apex predators patrolling the deeper coast, the aggressive bull sharks and the massive tiger sharks.
The babies are safely locked inside a dark, nutrient-rich vault, surrounded by tiny crabs and shrimp to practice hunting on.
And they desperately need that safe wooden vault for a very, very long time because their biological growth rate is agonizingly slow.
It really is.
I mean, we have incredible detailed data from long-term mark recapture studies where biologists catch, tag, release, and then recapture the same sharks years later. Studies conducted in places like the warm waters of Bimini in the Bahamas found that, on average, a juvenile nurse shark only grows about 8.68 centimeters per year.
That's barely over 3 inches of physical growth annually.
3 inches a year, which means it takes an incredibly painfully long time for them to reach a size where they are safe from predators.
And an even longer time to reach full sexual maturity and start reproducing themselves to replace the population. A male nurse shark might take a full 10 to 15 years of surviving the ocean just to mature.
And the females take even longer, between 15 and 20 entire years, before they're physically ready to have their very first litter of pups.
This agonizingly slow maturation rate is a critical piece of information for anyone trying to understand the balance of the ocean. It means that if a few large adult nurse sharks are suddenly removed from the delicate ecosystem through commercial overfishing or massive habitat destruction, the local population simply cannot quickly bounce back.
It literally takes 2 full decades to grow a replacement for a single breeding female. The math of their survival is highly precarious.
Exactly.
And just as a quick, fascinating biological side note, while we are talking about their appearance and growth, while almost all of them eventually lose their spots and take on that solid brown camouflage pattern, there is some stunning, rare genetic variation out there.
Oh, you're talking about piebaldism.
Yes. Biologists have documented cases of piebaldism in nurse sharks. It's a rare genetic condition that results in a partial, scattered lack of pigmentation in the skin.
It's beautiful to see. It can result in a massive shark that looks heavily speckled with stark white patches, or even appears almost entirely milk white against the dark reef.
It's an incredible, ghostly reminder of the deep, natural genetic diversity swimming out there in the dark.
But eventually, those spotted pups in the mangroves continue to grow, inch by slow inch. The protective spots fade away, they reach that solid, heavy brown adult coloration, and their bodies finally outgrow the narrow gaps of the safety of the mangrove fortress.
They move out into the deeper, more dangerous coral reefs and vast sandy flats. They claim a cave. They learn to hunt in the dark.
And when they finally reach that sexual maturity, 15 or 20 years after they were born, their behavior shifts dramatically. The peaceful routine is broken.
What scene are we witnessing right now? Take us beneath the surface. What is happening to them?
You feel a subtle, undeniable, deep-seated shift in the changing seasons. The water temperature around your home reef is steadily warming. The angle of the penetrating sunlight changes as summer approaches.
And deep within your biology, an ancient, irresistible instinct pulls you firmly away from the safety and the familiar hunting grounds of your home reef.
You begin a massive journey. You are traveling hundreds of miles, navigating a seemingly endless, featureless blue ocean entirely by reading the Earth's microscopic magnetic hum, drawn relentlessly, inescapably, to a specific, incredibly shallow sand flat that you haven't visited in years.
We are witnessing the grand gathering. The location is the pristine, incredibly shallow, blindingly sun-drenched waters of a remote island chain in early June.
Dozens of massive, fully grown adult nurse sharks are arriving from all directions, circling slowly, methodically, in water that is often less than a single meter deep. Their broad dorsal fins are literally cutting through the surface of the perfectly calm water.
The information we have on this massive gathering is completely mind-blowing. Biologists conducted a massive, continuous observation effort stretching over 30 years at the Dry Tortugas, a remote protected island group far off the southern coast of Florida.
30 entire decades.
Right, and for all that time, scientists carefully tagged and meticulously tracked individual adult nurse sharks as they arrived at this one specific, tiny courtship and mating ground.
And what they proved through that immense effort is extreme, almost unbelievable site fidelity. 68% of the tagged sharks reliably returned to this exact same shallow sand flat in subsequent mating seasons.
They tracked individual specific sharks returning to this tiny patch of sand for up to 28 consecutive years.
To truly put that astonishing fact in perspective, an individual shark could live its daily life hundreds of kilometers away. It could survive massive hurricanes tearing up the coast, shifting ocean currents, changing ecosystems and human interference for nearly 3 decades, and still possess the flawless spatial memory and the overwhelming instinct to return to the exact same few acres of white sand to breed.
It also definitively proves a lifespan stretching well into their 40s, which is remarkable for a wild animal.
It really is.
And this massive tracking effort also revealed a fascinating behavior called partial migration. While some of the sharks simply choose to stay locally in the warm waters of the Dry Tortugas year-round, others are massive, long-distance commuters.
Right. Tag individuals were recorded migrating up to 335 kilometers away during the long off-season, traveling all the way up the west coast of Florida to the murky waters of the Tampa Bay area to hunt and rest, and then returning with flawless, pinpoint precision to breed in June.
Think about the energy required for that commute. It's like walking out of your front door, traveling completely across the country without a map, a compass, or road signs, spending the entire winter foraging there, and then walking back years later to stand on the exact same kitchen floor tile.
The timing of this grand gathering is highly coordinated, but it differs dramatically by sex. The mature males make this arduous, energy-draining journey and return to the shallow mating grounds annually. They are there every summer.
But the females arrive on a biennial or triennial cycle, meaning they only return to mate every 2 or sometimes 3 years.
This makes perfect sense when you consider the energetic costs we discussed earlier. A female desperately needs a year or two of heavy feeding and deep rest just to recover from the massive physiological drain of producing a large litter of huge, yolk-nourished pups.
But wait, I have to stop and ask about the mood of this gathering. We spent the entire first half of this journey marveling at their incredible social tolerance,
Yeah.
how they peacefully, calmly pile on top of each other in dark caves during the day like puppies.
Right.
But when you watch footage of the shallow mating season, it is the exact opposite. It is highly physical, incredibly chaotic, and fiercely intense. How does an animal go from peacefully sleeping under a pile of its neighbors to this frantic, aggressive behavior?
The answer is entirely chemical. During the brief, intense window of the summer breeding season, the entire calm communal dynamic is completely hijacked by pheromones.
Ah, chemistry.
Yes. Receptive females arriving at the sand flats release highly potent, species-specific chemical cues into the shallow water column. The incredibly sensitive olfactory systems of the searching males instantly detect these chemical plumes, and the behavioral switch is violently flipped.
So the peaceful resting gives way to a highly stereotyped, incredibly physically demanding, and often aggressive mating dance.
Exactly. And from what I understand, this dance is incredibly complex and ritualized. It usually starts with a behavior called parallel swimming, where a large male, or sometimes a competitive group of up to 3 males, will aggressively approach a female and perfectly synchronize their swimming with hers, moving tightly together over the shallow sand, matching her every turn.
Then comes the critical physical maneuver, pectoral gripping. The male executes a sudden, forceful, incredibly precise strike, using his powerful bone-crushing jaws to bite down firmly on one of the female's broad pectoral fins.
He isn't trying to eat her.
Right. He is literally using her muscular fin as an anchor point, a physical fulcrum for leverage. From there, while holding her fin tight in his teeth, the male pushes his massive bulk against the female, attempting to physically pivot her heavy body and roll her 90 degrees onto her back on the seafloor so they can successfully align and populate.
It requires immense explosive strength and perfect leverage, thrashing the shallow water into white foam.
But what is equally, if not more, fascinating are the female avoidance behaviors. Her cooperation is absolutely not guaranteed.
No, it's not.
If a female is simply not receptive to a specific male's advances, or if she wants to test his strength, she has evolved highly effective defensive strategies. Because this all takes place in very shallow water, a female might intentionally flee into water so incredibly shallow that her heavy belly is actively rubbing the sand and her dorsal fins and back are completely exposed to the hot air.
Oh, wow.
In water that terribly shallow, the bulky, thrashing male simply doesn't have the hydrodynamic room to maneuver, get his jaws around her fin, and generate the leverage to roll her over.
Or, if she can't reach the extreme shallows, she might employ the ultimate passive defense. She will stop swimming entirely, sink to the bottom, and lie completely rigid and perfectly flat against the solid seafloor.
Remember that pancake shape we talked about at the very beginning?
Yes. She presses her flattened belly into the sand, locking down, making it physically impossible for the male to get his jaws under her fin to grip it, or to roll her heavy, low center of gravity body over. She just becomes a boulder.
And studies have shown that when females do finally accept a mate, the resulting litters of pups often have multiple paternities, meaning a single litter of pups born at the same time can have several entirely different fathers.
It's a brilliant, highly effective evolutionary strategy to maximize the genetic diversity and resilience of the next generation.
And that resilient next generation will eventually, slowly find their way back to the dark, tangled mangrove fortresses, then to the deep coral caves, continuing a massive, slow-moving biological cycle that has been turning flawlessly for millions of years.
If we take a huge step back and connect all of this intense biology to the bigger picture of the ocean, we see that the nurse shark is not just a passive resident of the reef, it is a highly active, totally irreplaceable architect of the ecosystem's overall health.
Let's revisit that profound concept of site fidelity one last time to really understand their impact. Imagine a massive 200-pound adult nurse shark that wakes up and leaves its specific coral cave every single night.
Okay.
It swims miles out to a distant seagrass bed, uses its incredible suction vacuum to eat several heavy lobsters, crabs, and sleeping fish, completely extracting those calories from the grass flat. And then it flawlessly navigates back to the exact same coral cave by dawn to rest, sleep, and digest.
By doing this massive commute day after day, year after year for up to 40 years, that individual shark is acting as an essential high-volume nutrient cycler.
It is constantly harvesting massive amounts of biological energy, calories, and biomass from the distant, surrounding seagrass flats and physically transporting it straight back to the precise pinpoint location of the coral reef.
When the shark digests its heavy meals and naturally produces waste while resting in the cave during the day, it is directly, continuously fertilizing the surrounding coral polyps and the vital algae that live within them.
It's astounding. The structural health of the coral reef itself, the very limestone foundation, is physically tied to the daily exhausting commute of the shark. It is a massive, living, breathing conveyor belt of vital nutrients, pulling energy from the dark sand and keeping the bright reef energized and alive.
Exactly. When you look at a vibrant coral reef, you aren't just looking at a static collection of rocks and colorful fish. You are looking at a vast, highly complex, deeply interconnected, living, breathing machine.
And the slow-moving, bottom-dwelling nurse shark, resting quietly and invisibly in the shadows of the cave, is a crucial, totally irreplaceable gear keeping that entire massive ocean engine turning. If you remove the gear, the machine falters.
So the next time you have the privilege to look at the ocean, or even just see a photograph of a beautiful coral reef, I want you to challenge yourself to look past the bright, fast-swimming, flashy fish in the foreground.
Look deeper into the frame. Look into the dark, hidden crevices, the deep, shadowed undercuts, the quiet places where the solid rock meets the soft sand.
Consider the unseen, quiet patience of a heavy creature that doesn't need to frantically race through the water because it has already entirely mastered the complex world beneath it.
If it takes 20 long years just to replace a single mother shark, and if they rely on the exact same few acres of shallow sand to breed for 30 years straight, what happens to the entire machine if human activity or changing climates alter just that one specific sandbar?
We're looking at a finely tuned system of immense patience and absolute precision.
What else is resting right now in the deep dark, perfectly adapted, waiting patiently for the sun to finally go down? Thank you so much for exploring the ocean with us today. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface, keep asking questions, and never lose your sense of wonder for the deep. This has been Saltwater Stories.